Cool. So thanks, guys. My name is Adrian. I work at DFX. I'm one of the co-founders there. And today we'll just talk about stablecoins. We'll do a walk down memory lane for some of you guys, and maybe for some of you guys, it's all brand new and crazy and degen. So that'll be hopefully a little bit fun. A little background for myself. Been into the Ethereum community for quite a few years. I worked at Consensus before, Truffle doing developer tooling, worked at UMA doing the synthetic stuff, and then eventually a couple of anonymous projects as well, but right now working on DFX. So here we go. Well, stability has always been something that we've been after ever since the beginning of humanity. People hoard gold or wheat or whatever it is that they want to be able to trade for in the future, so they can get the things that they need, right? So this is something that's really core to our humanity, if you think about it. And we can go into like a history of banking stuff, but we only have 20 minutes, so we're going to go right into one of the first and oldest stable coins on the blockchain, which is Nubits. And this is just to give you an idea of the fact that stable coins were in existence even before Ethereum was. Before Nubits was a bunch of other stuff too, but Nubits was created in 2014, one of the oldest stable coins. It was algorithmically backed even back then, and it's two token system, so it's very reminiscent of something that we know today, but it depegged multiple times, and eventually it's dead now, like a lot of stable coins that we'll see. And this is probably the most popular stablecoins you guys know, Tether, or USDT, created in 2014 by a centralized exchange called Bitfinex. It was called Realcoin for a few months before they rebranded, and this is probably where a lot of people get into crypto because they get on the centralized exchanges and they can swap it for something called USDT. It's like, oh, what's that? It must be kind of like USD, and of course it is. It's used by many centralized exchanges, and it supposedly has one-to-one redeemability. But there's been a lot of controversy over the years whether or not they actually have that. And that still, some people think it's settled, some people think it's still up in the air. It's very controversial, like many things in crypto is. Now, in 2017, MakerDAO actually launched a token called DAI. MakerDAO being one of the first decentralized protocols. I guess you can even say one of the successful DAOs that started way before and is still in existence today. And they created something called DAI. And the way it works is that it's over-collateralized with ETH and other stuff now. But in the beginning, it was just ETH. And they would basically, people would deposit $150 worth of ETH, as an example. And you can mint out of thin air 100 DAI tokens, which are worth like $100, $1 each, right? And so the idea is that it's always backed by something that's more than what it's actually supposed to be worth. And in this system, surprising or non-surprisingly, seems to work, kind of. And there were a couple times where DAI is a little bit above peg, and we'll get into like how they fix that. But DAI was one of the more popular, I guess still is one of the popular, and in quotes, decentralized stablecoins on the market today. And you'll see this in many places on the blockchain. Of course, in 2018, Circle, with heavy affiliations with Coinbase, created USDC, USD Coin as they call it. And this is, again, very similar to Tether, almost exactly the same idea, really. It's a fiat-backed stablecoin, supposedly one-to-one redeemable. And it's actually backed by cash equivalents, and short-term treasury bonds, right? The one big difference that they have is that culturally, it's quite different from USDT in that they make monthly reports of audits and attestations. So they have a third-party firm confirming that they have certain assets that back the tokens that are in circulation. And Jeremy Allaire, one of the founders of Circle, he cooperates with regulators quite a bit. And one of the things that maybe some people don't like is that because he cooperates so well with regulators, there's actually a blacklisting feature in there. So if the tokens are hacked or stolen or whatever, there's a way in the smart contract where you can stop the transfers of those tokens in certain addresses. Now, we'll skip ahead to, not ahead chronologically, but in a different category to SUSD, which I guess not a lot of people use these days as something that you trade a lot with, but it actually made huge waves because of different reasons. It was created by Synthetics, which was originally called Havin before 2018. And they wanted to actually create a stablecoin. You'll see the theme here, like everyone wants to make a stablecoin for some reason, right? But like every time you transfer, it's supposed to charge a fee, and there were a lot of issues. They had trouble finding product market fit, but eventually they had this whole synthetic exchange idea where people would just over collateralize with synthetic SNX tokens. I think in the beginning it was like 700%. So with $700 of SNX, you're able to mint $100 of SUSD. So this was interesting because one of the first things that they did has nothing to do with their stablecoin, but more to the fact that they actually pioneered some of the liquidity mining aspects of things, right? And for those of us who may not know what liquidity mining or farming is, it's basically, we're giving you free tokens, sprinkling, some treats on top, as long as you park your money over here, supply your liquidity, and then, that's everyone's happy, right? And so that really kicked things off a couple years back. To give you a little bit more context here, we have one of the first successful lending protocols, compound finance. And the way it works is that you have a bunch of people depositing a certain token, and you can borrow as another token. Over-collateralized lending, very similar to a lot of things that we're all very familiar with today. And what was most interesting is that this gave our community the ability to have these yield-producing stablecoins, because whenever you deposit your tokens, your USDC, USDT, or USD or DAI, you actually get these C tokens, which represent the tokens that you deposited, right? So that means it's like, I put in 100 USDC, and then I get a bunch of C USDC, saying that that's the amount I have a certain claim to the pool that I deposited into. So it's redeemable for the underlying stablecoin, but because it's a lending platform, you actually earn interest over time over your deposits, and that means that these tokens that's supposed to represent your stake are now yield-producing stablecoins, right? So technically, they're no longer stable, but their underlying is stable. So this actually created this age of yield-producing stables, which really kicks things off in DeFi summer, which was 2 summers ago, and a lot of people had a lot of fun farming crazy yields, right? Now, here's another protocol that has a lot of context within. Like, it comes up. I'm sure many people have heard of them, but I'll just go over the basics real quick. It's a decentralized exchange, much like Uniswap, an automated market maker where you can just swap things, but it's highly optimized for like-valued pairs because of how they do their bonding curve, fancy math stuff, of course, and it's got pools that allow people to swap tokens. Again, just like Uniswap. LPs or liquidity providers will provide liquidity, of course, into these pools and get a cut of each swap. So that's great. It makes a lot of sense. But what's amazing is that there's the farming aspect of it again, right? LPs are also rewarded curve tokens. You sprinkle these fancy governance tokens on top, and everyone goes crazy. Crypto Twitter is just very, very excited about this. So the other thing that they do is that you can actually get boosted yield if you lock up your curve tokens. Right now, it gets a little bit circular here. It's really quite interesting. You get these fancy CRV tokens, and then you can lock them up to get even more fancy CRV tokens. I don't know if you guys are following, but this is getting more and more interesting. Right, so this is like one of these old screenshots I found online. Just to give you an idea of the different pools that they have. You can see that each of these pools are all like value pairs. You get your YDAI, YUSDC as well. We'll talk about that. That's another protocol called Yearn or Yearn. SUSD makes an appearance, and also other things that are, to us maybe not what we don't think of when we think stablecoins. But technically, you have these other tokens that are pegged to like the BTC price, or they represent an underlying BTC, and then these are like value pools as well, right? Because it's a pool of HBTC and WBTC. So that's cool. But what's more interesting is APY, where everyone wants yields, right? Who doesn't like free money? So here we go. Your base APY. That's all nice and fancy. Already beats most banks out there, obviously, TradFi banks. But, however, you'll see that that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? These are the APYs that you get from people trading on the pool. And it's very natural to understand. You have an exchange, people trade. There's a cut of it that goes to the exchange for the people who provide liquidity. I hope I'm not talking too fast, but that's what that is. Now, this is what most people are interested in, the rewards APY, your fancy sprinkle tokens on top, right? And you'll see that it's, these are the farming tokens, right? You get a minimum percentage. That's what you get if you just supply liquidity. But if you lock in a whole bunch of curve tokens, boom, not only do you get 11%, your 11% is great, but it's not as good as 29.47%, right? And some of these are even crazier. You can see the SUSD pool goes all the way up to 35% curve tokens, and plus you get a 3.91% of SNX tokens. Of course, these numbers are instantaneous, right? Maybe like Curve tokens or SNX tokens, they go to 0 the next day, and then boom, you don't have anything else. But hey, they're free tokens. You just park your money there, right? And your money is stable, so why not? And so this is, you start to understand why DeFi Summer was such a crazy thing, and all these people were super excited about it. Now, one of the most popular pools that they have is something called the 3 pool, because it has these 3 popular stablecoins that we talked about. It has DAI, USDT, USDC. We talked about all 3. There's a reason why they're popular. They're kind of different, but that's the same. But they're also kind of the same because they have a decent amount of liquidity. So it's great for LPs. It's very stable. You can get a whole bunch of them, swap them, very easy to use, right? And you can earn Curve tokens by supplying these 1 or all 3 of these into these pools. And yeah, what's not to like? You put in something very stable and you get free money in return, with very high, potentially high yields. But the problem is you're getting these, funny tokens. They're giving you these CRV tokens, which are probably, you might think they're worth $1,000, or you might think they're worth 0. So it means that you look at that, when you look at that yield, that 29% or 35% or whatever it is, it might seem really good, but the next day if Curve prices go down, then you're kind of fucked. So what do we do, right? I mean, hey, we're all on crypto to get fucked, right? So anyway, Yearn Finance right here. What it does is that it's a really interesting protocol. It tries to automate yield farming, and some of the strategies that they do is like auto compounding and also like farming the best yields. I think there was a strategy where it would look at which lending protocols give you the higher yields, and then it would just move the money. And, like this is before gas was very expensive, of course. And in kind of way, it's kind of like a hedge fund. It's helping you find the best yield. There's like, they're risk adjusted, or maybe like they have certain theses on different pools or vaults, right? Like, to try to give you the best bang for your buck and kind of what you want to invest in. And what they did was they created something called Y3 Curve, right? Remember, 3 Curve is basically the LP token, the token you get for supplying into the 3 pool on Curve. So Y3 Curve actually does that for you, right? So it basically, if you can deposit your stablecoins into the Yearn vault, right, they will actually boost the yield because they have a whole bunch of locked up Curve. So you get that upper end of that yield percentage already, right? And they take that Curve that you earn, that boost to earn, and they just dump it. They dump it for more stable coins and just put it right back in, right? Again, circles, right? That's the kind of, even the logos are all circles these days. So it's like, it really gives you the ability to automate a lot of this stuff. And of course, they take a cut, and then you're happy because now you're not really that exposed to those Curve tokens, and you didn't even have to lock up Curve tokens. You didn't need to touch the Curve tokens at all, right? It just does all that for you under the hood, and they take a cut of the profit, And that's fun and all, but let's take a break. This is all getting a little too composable. Money Legos and all that. And let's talk about algo stables, right? Algo stables are a different class of stables. You'll remember that the previous stable coins we talked about, they're either backed by fiat or they're backed by crypto and all these other things. With algo stables, however, they want to do something a little bit more funky, right? From Wikipedia, algo stables, or sometimes they're called seigniorage stable coins, depending on, I mean, like I can get technical about the definitions. It may not be 100% correct, but from Wikipedia, algo stables, adjustments are usually made on chain. There's no collateral needed to mint, so not really backed by anything. But the value of these coins are controlled by supply and demand through algorithms stabling the price. So we're gonna put in incentives for people to buy more, or incentives for people to sell more to adjust the price in the market. And this gets a little interesting, I think, from an intellectual perspective. But as you might imagine, probably not as stable as having something that has stuff backing it, right? So let's take a look here. One of the first ones, Ampleforth, which, fun fact, is a village in England, I believe, created in 2018, rebranded from something called Fragments. And I think the minimalism of this kind of tells you, the forefront that they're trying to create here, right? Here we go. We have elastic supply is kind of what they were doing. So that if the price of an AMPL token, AMPL token, is over $1, then we simply just give people more. So if you have, I don't know, 100 amples in your wallet, and then for some reason the price is $2 per ample, then we'll just print another 100 and give it to you, and now your ample tokens are worth $1 again, right? Because we just doubled it, right? So we just literally just reach into your wallet, change the number, and that's it. And then so it's the same if the price goes under as well, right? If the price goes from like $1 to 50 cents, then all right, we'll just take half of your coins away, and now boom, they're worth $1. Right? Isn't it magical? Right? It's just everything is memes, right? Everything is just all about the narrative in humans' heads. So why not, right? Well, one of the reasons is that it breaks composability. Once you have a lot of stuff, building on top of each other, depending on the fact that you have certain wallet balances, things might break, right? Your wallet can have more or less tokens depending on when you look at it, basically, depending on when this whole rebasing elastic supply thing happens. So, here, look at this. It's a vegetable. Probably something I should eat more of, but hey, it's really similar to Ampleforth, actually, but it had much better memes and emojis. The key difference is that, I've been told, is that a portion of each supply was used to buy the Y curve for its treasury. So it builds up this whole treasury. It's supposed to be more DAO-like and do other stuff, right? But the most important thing is that it kicked the farming craze in high gear, right? This is the age of the food farms, right? Where people were just creating like all these protocols or monetary experiments, as they call it, just based off of whatever vegetable or food emojis they could find in Emojipedia. And this was crazy. This was crazy. You get like rocket high yields, and people were quitting their day jobs just because they wanted to put emojis on their LinkedIn instead. It was like a new world. People thought it would never end, but of course it eventually fizzled out a bit. Pickle. I don't know. Has anyone used Pickle here? Yeah, it's a great protocol. It's not a stablecoin, but I bring it up because it illustrates how memes and jokes are blurred with attempted financial innovation. And sometimes in a very hilarious way, sometimes in a very profitable way, but sometimes in a crushingly bankrupting kind of way as well. So what Pickle actually initially tried to do was they wanted to use farming incentives to push stablecoin prices up and down, because I think the founders of Pickle saw that the farming craze was happening, and it was pushing SUSD up and down. It was pushing the DAI values up and down. So they're like, oh, why don't we just create these farms, and then we'll just spray our funny tokens at the pool that needs more, and to move that price up, and then not spray it at the pool that doesn't have it, so that it encouraged people to sell one token for the other. And of course, it ultimately failed because it's just too slow to adjust, right? And infinite printing, not sustainable at all, obviously. And DAI overpeg was no longer an issue. So there was always this issue with DAI being a little bit overpegged, because DAI is actually backed by about a third of USDC. And there was a certain collateralization ratio that allowed it to be slightly overpegged. And then eventually they lowered that, I think, to 101% or something like that. And then DAI was no longer so much overpegged. And then they also diversified the crypto that was backing it, right? So that was that. But then, as with most love stories with vegetables, they pivot, of course, and then now they're a Yearn competitor. Basically, they do the whole aggregation thing, but it has its own niche now, and it's still going, surprisingly, right? Another interesting thing here is empty set dollar, right? So rather than directly adjusting supply, like putting your finger into wallets and moving those numbers around, if the price goes up above $1, people who locked up or bonded their ESD will just get given more ESD, right? This empty set dollar. If the price goes under $1, then people can actually buy coupons that give you ability to get future ESD at a discount. Of course, this requires you to believe that ESD will be back at $1 eventually, right? And you can kind of see how this becomes, again, quite circular. I mean, logo, again, is also very circular. But this didn't really always work, right? So Lex Moskovsky, a friend of mine, and actually back then, this tweet only had 54 likes, but now he has over 100,000 followers. Very interesting. He gave me a lot of hopium about ESD, and DSD is actually a fork of the ESD project. Yeah, almost, yeah. And then basically, those coupons have an expiration date, and then he was saying how all these whales have these coupons, so the number must go back up to $1. Anyway, I'm gonna go real quick here. I'm gonna skip Frax. And one of the things about the stablecoins is that they're all pegged to US dollars. I think that's something that needs to change, being a Canadian here. And so there's also stuff that's not pegged to fiat currencies as well. We can talk about those another time. DFX, what we were trying to do is bootstrap a non-USD stablecoin ecosystem. And then so we work with all these different fiat-backed stablecoins in Canada, the euros, Singaporean dollar, Indonesian rupiah, New Zealand dollar, Brazilian lira. And we're also trying to create our own fractional stables so that we can have that dynamic liquidity, but also backed by fiat-backed stables. We'll get into more of that. I'm out of time, unfortunately. Please follow DFX Finance on Twitter, and thank you so much for your time. Okay.